Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I am your host, Zach O'Brien. With me here, it's Bobby Spielberg. Bobby, how you doing today?
Doing good. I like the Bobby Spielberg for sure.
I haven't called you that in a while.
Do we want to talk about the drone? Is that what we're going to talk about right now?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. We could talk about that, Bob.
Well, I mean, that's what I was, last time I was Spielberging, I lost the drone. It's stuck in a tree.
Bob got our drone stuck in a tree, and apparently today there's a tree guy going out to cut it out of the tree.
Technically, it was your drone that I lost, and I was like a half a mile away from the drone filming some grape harvest, and it got us stuck in a tree, and it was kind of comical. I felt bad, but I did buy you a new drone.
You bought me a new drone immediately, so I couldn't even be mad. But, you know, sometimes stuff happens when you Spielberg.
That's right. Sacrifice for the film.
We have a great episode today. We got our old friend Mike Rasmussen on the podcast. Follow him on Instagram, Facebook, at Salmon Sac River. He is a fishing guide here in Northern California that specializes in the Chinook salmon runs. Last time we went with him fishing, we got like 120 pounds of salmon.
We caught the biggest fish of our lives, actually.
Yeah, the biggest fishes, plural. We got 4. That's a great video that we have on our YouTube page. So we got him on the podcast because I really wanted to talk about, 1, this year's salmon run. Salmon season just opened. 2, all this controversy surrounding all the juvenile salmon, and the potential die-off with the drought and the warm waters. And 3, just what life is like as a fishing guide here in NorCal. So we went deep on a couple of those subjects. First, make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Talking NorCal and Active NorCal, as well as social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're everywhere. Go follow us. We appreciate your support as we're going to continue to hop into your eardrums every single week. Now let's just hop right into the episode with the Tahoes. Hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. Or NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
So usually we start off each episode with sort of a longer story, and this week I'm saving it to the end because, as many people know, we kind of go deep on legend stuff, specifically Lemurians. Like I'm one of the quote unquote experts on Lemurians.
Well, are you? I mean, really? I guess we'll.
I don't know if I am.
We'll get deeper into that later.
Well, I'm clearly not, but I think what I am is a third-party source. Like I'm not in the Lemurian culture or crowd, and I quote unquote report on what I see and what I read, and like I've said a million times on this podcast, if you Google Lemurians, 2 of my articles are like at the very top of Google.
You're an information gatherer.
I am an influencer, a Lemurian influencer. Anyway, we have a long Lemurian story that we're going to talk about at the end, and I wanted to give us time to do that. So we'll do that at the end. So let's just hop right into the news of the week.
First story: popular McCloud Falls campground closed due to bear activity.
Fowler's Campground. This is really interesting because I've never heard. I've heard of campgrounds closing down because of bears, but they're actually going to go through and deep clean Fowler's Campground, which, as anyone knows, if you hike the 3 tiers of McCloud Falls, it's right in the middle of it, right? And they think that with all there's probably hidden trash somewhere and whatever people spilled, like grease or something on the ground.
Left dog food. And that's why this bear keeps coming back. But this is a very popular campground, and for them to close it is pretty remarkable. Yeah, I didn't know how to feel about this at first. Obviously, we would rather try to figure out a way to not have to, kill this bear, obviously. And so this whole deep clean, I've never heard of a deep cleaning of a campground before. It probably should be done more often in more places. But it's a black bear. It's like an RV park, right? Most of the people that they have hookups for RVs and tent camping, all sorts of.
you know which one I'm talking about.
Right.
Fowler's. It's right between Lower McCloud Falls and Middle McCloud Falls. And if you camp there, you can literally hike to either in like 5 minutes, and right along the McCloud River, you can fish the entire thing. So it's a really cool campsite. And it's also not shocking that, bears have found their way there, much like, Lake Tahoe we hear all the time. People aren't doing proper bear, techniques, hiding their garbage and cleaning up after themselves. And so, but it's just this one particular pesky bear that they just cannot get rid of. And so they're forced to close it and quote unquote deep clean it.
How long are they going to close it for?
It's until further notice. I think they're probably going to deep clean. And how long does it take to deep clean a campsite?
Well, right. Yeah.
I mean, you drop your car off for a detail, it takes a couple days. Like
they probably don't have a massive crew to go do it. They probably have one or two guys that are going to like kind of walk around the property and figure out what needs to be done. And
that's a great question. I would actually, now that I think about it, I'd assume that they would hire a big crew to come in. Every day that they close that campsite, they're losing significant amount of money. Like, each campsite, and I don't even know how many there are there, maybe 20. I mean, that's whatever it is, that's $600 a day or something. So, it's the Forest Service, it's our tax money. So I would think they could afford it.
You can still go like hike the falls, right?
Correct.
You just can't stay there and camp.
And that's another great question, which they did not get into.
I appreciate you telling me I'm giving you great questions.
And well, they are. I'm guessing they're also going to block off the entire area so you can hike past it, but not actually go into the area where the campgrounds are. So like anyone that's made that hike, you actually walk through the campgrounds,
right? It's like the
between,
parking lot kind of too, right?
There's a parking lot nearby. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're not allowed to park there unless you're actually camping there. So like you would park at a different spots if you're going to just the waterfalls, But it's in my years, I haven't heard. I've heard of places closing down. Like I said, they closed down the entire backcountry of Lassen because there were so many bear incidents. But I've never heard of an actual deep clean. So it's fascinating. I haven't even heard of this in Tahoe, which we know how many
Keep
bears.
Tahoe blue.
Yeah, but and I know that they have large groups of people that clean Tahoe, like the beaches, pretty regularly. But to do a deep clean like this, it's really interesting. And they're gonna remove any food smells they can find, and basically eradicate any temptations the bear might have.
I don't know if it's going to be effective. I think really what you got to do is relocate the bear, right? You got to like tranquilize it and move it somewhere that's a little bit further away, but
it's
natural instincts.
That, yeah.
Its natural instincts are going to be like, there's food here. Let's go get that food.
And this is probably what they're trying to avoid. In Tahoe, they have in the Nevada areas of Tahoe, they have a 3-strike rule. If a bear keeps breaking into a house, the same bear over and over and over, eventually they euthanize it. And they're trying to probably avoid this. The picture that they provided, it's literally a bear like breaking into a camper.
Right.
So I'm assuming this bear is smart and causing a lot of trouble. And so they would rather close down the campsite and go through all this than actually have to relocate it or euthanize it.
We'll have to pay attention to the story. I'm sure that when they reopen, they're going to have a statement or what have you, whether they found the bear or not. And so we're going to have to stay tuned.
I wonder how long it takes for the bear to just give up and move on, right? It's like, okay, so you close it for 2 weeks, say, and eventually the bear's like, oh, no more food here. Let me move on.
Well, the water there is full of fish. Like the water is a source of food for the bear, not just the campground. And so it's like there's still going to be food available for this bear in that area, just not as much man-made food, or at least that's the hope of this cleanup.
And maybe this would train the bear to be more reliant on those natural resources. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Again, first time I've heard of them deep cleaning something like this, and I just hope it goes well for the bear. But it's a lot of people are surely super disappointed because they got an email, they probably had their family trip or whatever. And we know that campsites are hard to come by this year after COVID. So that could ruin some people's trips. So I feel bad for them. But you got to do what you got to do.
Got to do what you got to do. We'll stay tuned to that story. Next story, brand new art installation coming to the Sacramento River Trail in Redding.
Yeah, so George Emerson, if anyone doesn't know, he's an extremely wealthy gentleman that lives in Redding, and he donated $1 million gift to create this art installation in memory of his late wife, Susan Emerson. So we did this article, and I didn't think that this would be controversial, but apparently it is, right? So, and it's this weird, big art, installation near the Stress Ribbon Bridge on the Sacramento River Trail, and you can kind of sit there and hang out by the river. And I didn't even think about this, but people are saying, why the hell are we putting these big man-made structures on this beautiful nature trail, which I get. But looking at the comment section, not everyone's too stoked about this. Not only that, but, $1 million can go a long way towards other infrastructure, towards trails. And some of this money is going to they're working on the Stress Ribbon Bridge, and I don't know how they're going to work on it, but they're making it better. They're giving improvements to it. But an oddly controversial art installation.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that this morning because I didn't look at it when I first saw the article as a negative thing.
Right, me either.
I saw it as good, but the more that I thought about it, so the thing that I compare it to is when you go hiking, when you go backpacking, and you see stacks of rocks that were stacked by
people
humans.
don't like those. Yeah,
people hate that stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, I as a hiker, especially when you're backpacking in like really remote areas, I appreciate seeing that because it does indicate you're on a path, you're on the right trail. But people don't like it. People think that it takes away from nature. And it's those same people that are not happy about this art installation. I think it's great. It's not like a huge thing. It'll be a little bit of an art, kind of a bench place where people can come and take pictures. They are also improving the Stress Ribbon Bridge with some of that money, which, nobody can argue with. And, one thing to question those people that are not happy about this art installation, do you not want the Stress Ribbon Bridge to be there? Because that's a man-made thing. And,
right.
They're not arguing about that because there's function to it. But, who cares? It's a man-made in the same area. If you're going to be taking pictures, you're probably going to see this man-made bridge if you're in that area. Let's just put a beautiful piece of art that was donated by a family that really appreciated the Sacramento River Trail.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were also just upset because that $1 million could go towards other things, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think art has its place, and especially in Redding is actually blooming with brand new art.
Well, look at the Sundial Bridge.
Talk about an art installation. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
And now there was controversy in that when that one was first being built, but at this point it is the signature of Redding, California, is the Sundial Bridge.
Right. Which it's crazy because I remember before that bridge was there.
Totally.
Right. It's so weird to even think of that, but yeah, so the question remains, what's the best use of $1 million? And of course, if you're making a memorial, art is helpful, but
I think it's bullshit when people are trying to tell you how to spend your money. Who cares?
True.
You go earn it, and then you spend it however you want it. If you've earned this money, you can spend it however you want it. If you want to dictate how millionaires or billionaires spend their money, go earn it yourself and prove it, because it's usually the smarter people that are more successful, and they're better with money. So maybe the people that are chiming in, getting pissed off, should just get their own money and donate it.
Also, I don't think people understand how much money George Emerson has given to the community. And is he the founder of Sierra Pacific? He's the chairman of Sierra Pacific, very, very wealthy man. And he has given, I've talked to, leaders in Redding who are telling me about these different projects they're doing that are all funded by George Emerson. So he is a philanthropist, and I think while this project is more public, and he clearly wanted a public remembrance of his late wife, all this good stuff happening behind the scenes, he also funded. So
I'm behind it.
Yeah, it's a weird-looking art installation. I mean, you saw the
Art
artist
always
rendition.
looks weird. That's why we're not artists.
Well, speak for yourself.
Well, whatever. I'm a video editor.
Well, you made some songs that I would consider
That's true.
art.
I mean, I have them right here.
But yeah, I get what people are saying. You could use that for different trail infrastructure and everything. But in this particular case, I think it was well warranted, and these people also don't know exactly what he's doing behind the scenes. So, long and the short, I'm with you. I'm for it. Let's create cool little things on the Sacramento River Trail. Art is not, it's not a hindrance to your enjoyment of nature, in my opinion.
Right. It just adds to it, in my opinion. Okay, next story, kind of a sad one. Experienced cliff jumper killed while jumping off the Lake Britton Bridge.
Yeah, this is really sad. His name was Don Taylor Gorham, 23. He lived in Sparks, Nevada, and he jumped off the Lake Britton Bridge off Highway 89. There was some confusion because we thought it was off of the Stand By Me Bridge, which people jump the fence and trespass on and jump off. A lot of cliff jumpers do that. There's been a lot of videos we've seen online of that. But this was off the actual Lake Britton Bridge on Highway 89, and he was there with a bunch of his cliff jumping friends. He was a very experienced, talented cliff jumper, and he landed awkwardly and didn't resurface, and they eventually found his body at the bottom, hours later. We cover a lot of this cliff jumping stuff. I'm a fan of it. I think if you're doing this type of stuff, the ramifications of what could happen if something goes wrong. I think this is a good wake-up call for the cliff jumping community, where, and we've had a couple of these guys on our podcast, that you always have a guy waiting at the bottom because you can easily knock yourself out hitting the water and drown, right? But if there's someone waiting for you in the water below, you pick them up, and if they're knocked out, at least they won't drown, and not to say there's always going to be risk with it. But super sad story. And, I went and we found his Instagram page, and he's just super talented doing cliff jumps all over Northern California. Young man, he followed us, and it's a really sad story, obviously really young. And so, rest in peace. But again, use this as a lesson to be safer.
Yeah, he was a member of the active NorCal Army. He was one of our followers, and so we do appreciate that. And he likes to do things that we like to do, and that's why he followed us. So it's never a good story when somebody tragically dies like this, but it is it brings to light the idea that maybe you always safety first. Always, whenever possible, have somebody in the water, scout the depth. All of the things that you could possibly do to be as safe as possible, try to do. Yeah,
and we actually, there was some controversy with our Brandon Beck episode because he detailed how he jumped off Bernie Falls. And not only is it an illegal jump, it is highly, highly, highly dangerous. People have died off it recently. And he basically went into, he's like, I would never do that again. Never. And anyone thinking about doing it, it's not worth it because it is that dangerous. And, he also outlined just the safety that they go through in checking the depth and having a spotter and just doing everything because anything can happen when you're doing these cliff jumps. But again, we will continue to cover these people because I do believe in living your life, and you can live your life however you'd like, and But it's super sad. Obviously, really young kid, and I'm sorry for the family and his friends that are dealing with it right now. But again, make it a lesson to be safe out in the wild, whatever you're doing.
Okay, last story. California congressman bulldozes Northern California pot greenhouses amid lava fire shooting controversy.
Okay, so there's a lot to go into here. So during the lava fire, a pot farmer who was evacuated tried to sneak into the closed, evacuated area to his home. I'd assume his home or where he works, or his marijuana farm. And at some point, a gun was brandished and they killed him. Now he was part of the Hmong community there, and since then there have been a lot of protests saying they didn't have to kill him. Basically, he was, it does come into question the legality of an evacuation zone, right? And like letting someone come in and then obviously what happened to him is super tragic. Then Doug LaMalfa, the senator or congressman, he super insensitively posts this video of him bulldozing an illegal pot farm, and I'll give him credit, it was illegal, and illegal pot farms have issues. But he looks like a complete jerk because they're going through this mourning period, and there's the Hmong community who is protesting, law enforcement and everything, and he goes through and does this. It is completely insensitive. It is also he referenced Apocalypse Now and like his quote when he was doing it. God, I hate politicians. I just don't like either side. I don't like politicians. But this is just this is like fueling the flames of this weed controversy going on up north.
Yeah, his quote was, "I love the smell of diesel power in the afternoon. It smells like victory." And then he gets on this bulldozer and bulldozes, this greenhouse. And yeah, I mean, it's clearly a political statement, and he meant to make content out of it. And so whatever, it is what it is. I mean, I don't love the story, but I don't love seeing greenhouses go down. I also don't love illegal operations, though, if I'm being honest. I like the cannabis community to follow all legal guidelines. But yeah, I mean, super insensitive, especially with the quote and just kind of rubbing it in their faces. It's not a good look for old Rep Doug LaMalfa.
Yeah, and I want to make clear that, illegal cannabis grows, especially the ones that are stealing water right now during our drought, they're not good. And, Siskiyou County itself, it has banned the commercial cannabis. So a lot of these pot grows are illegal, but it's just the optics of him doing it, right after. And actually, he did it before. He actually bulldozed it before the shooting happened and then posted it right after. So that's the problem with it. And it is weird that, there's they estimate there's 5,000 to 6,000 illegal grows in Siskiyou County. So,
yeah, and the reason that they don't want it legalized there is because there's a lot of natural resources that will be affected by generally the water, like them trying to steal water from places that they're not allowed to, or bring water in that, and so I get it. And every county is able to make their own laws with regards to cannabis. And I trust them on this one. So it's not a positive story. We're living in this weird world of cannabis where literally you drive 2 hours and there's a cannabis hotel over in Humboldt. And here, farmers are getting shot and congressmen are rubbing it in their faces. And it's just this weird time for cannabis in California. And so it's anyway. The wild, wild west.
It is the wild, wild west.
And that does it for the NorCal News of the Week.
All right, that does it for the news of the week. Now let's go to our awesome interview with Mike Rasmussen. He is he's a fishing guide in Northern California, specializing in Chinook salmon. Let's go to Mike. All right, we'd now like to welcome on a very special guest, our good friend, fishing guide here in Northern California, Mike Rasmussen. Welcome to the show, Mike.
How you doing, Zach?
Doing well. Good to see you. So I know we got to start with the barge hole opener. It happened this week on the Sacramento River. How'd it go?
I couldn't have gone better. I blessed to have a Ryan Tripp around, and he actually ran the boat and put our little trip together. And we've done it before. Last year we didn't. This year we were back together, and I actually didn't have super high expectations. Last year was pretty tough. The year before that was good for us, but as a whole wasn't great. And what I saw around downriver, I just wasn't sure how it was going to be, and everybody showed up, 80 boats, or I heard it may have even been 100 boats. I don't know, a lot of boats. And right off the bat from the dark, boy, we started getting on them and getting them with the lures there.
Gotcha. I lost you for a second. You're good.
Yeah. So backtrack a little bit.
No, that's fine. So so for anyone who doesn't know what the barge hole opener is on the Sacramento River, kind of give a run through of what it is and why it's so important.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the stage is set. At the barge hole, it opens 2 weeks after the lower river opens from Red Bluff Diversion Dam downriver. So it's kind of a special event. Fish get by in the first 2 weeks of the season. We don't know what got by before the lower river opened up. We can only assume by what we see, for the 2 weeks we get to fish below the Red Bluff Diversion Dam before the upper river opens. Now the barge hole is unique in the fact that it's kind of at the mouth of the hatchery. Battle Creek comes in near Cottonwood, California, and at the mouth of Battle Creek is the barge hole. It's a 50-foot deep hole. It's a huge hole as far as the Sacramento River is concerned, and these fish pile up there. All the fish that are going to the hatchery, salmon that are going upriver to downtown Redding to spawn. So we have natural spawn fish and we have hatchery spawn fish, all kind of accumulating there. So there can be quite an accumulation of fish there for when the season opens. Traditionally, it's pretty much lights out. The last half a dozen years, we've had a good year or two, and the rest of the other years have been just a little bit of a struggle. So, like I said, we didn't know what to expect. Everybody shows up as always. Right off the bat, so we dropped in our glow-in-the-dark lures at legal fish time. It was 5:07. I mean, it's pretty much dark still. And I think Ryan started us off, hooked one right away, and it came off, and after that we started filling up the box. Had a couple good rods, had Mike Tipton and Nate from down in Butte City, some good hands. You had fish. We weren't guiding. We were kind of just everybody together as far as a friend trip, and so we had some talent in the boat. And right off the bat, we got into them, and everybody actually got into them. As you looked around and look at all these boats, and it's a pretty crazy scene there. A lot of nets were coming out, and it makes you feel good because it's not always like that, or hasn't been the last few years, and made me feel like there was we have a healthy run this year. So yeah, it got started right away. We banged them out at 6:30. We were done with our limit of 8 fish, and probably lost another half a dozen. It couldn't have gone better.
Well, what's that like fishing in like a traffic jam like that? Are there a lot of people sort of running into each other?
Oh man, it's chaotic. I say it's like a gladiator event, kind of, and there's eyes everywhere on you. And yeah, right off the bat, we had a guy come into us in the dark, and he actually we T-boned him. He drifted right into our boat. Nothing you can do in there. The currents kind of push you around, and it's not a place for beginners to start learning to drive their boat or to fish, period. I was super intimidated my first time there. It's like you kind of just stay on the edges, or you don't really want to engage the big pile of boats that's right in the middle where the fish want to be when the sun comes up. And Ryan, he's never really been intimidated by it. He just he gets in there, and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you're pushing boats off sometimes with your feet or your hands, and you hook a fish that may run through two different boats lines, and it's pretty wild. I actually enjoy it now. It's a pretty big gathering, and I mean it's great for people watching. It's a pretty unique experience. I feel like everyone should check it out, even if it's on YouTube, and you don't do it. And you take a look at some videos from there. It's pretty entertaining, to say the least. I mean, it's not for some people, but you know, it's been going on a long time, and it's quite a show.
Yeah, if anything, it signals the opening of salmon season. Like, I know salmon season's already open, but you know, it sort of the whole river is opened up by that point.
Correct.
You mentioned you didn't have much expectations for this year. What are your expectations for the salmon season going into this year? We know of like the drought and everything that's going on in the river. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
I am. You know, 3 years ago, so I have a relationship with a manager with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's research department. He keeps me informed, you know, and 3 years ago, the Department of Water Resources, it gets pretty deep. So the Department of Water Resources controls the water flows out of Keswick Dam. There's been some pretty poor practices as far as that goes in the last dozen years or so. Actually, I think going back 15 years, where when the fall run Chinook salmon, which we're fishing for now, will spawn naturally in downtown Redding, not at the hatchery. These fish spawn in the river. About the time they set up and start spawning, the Department of Water Resources would drop the river levels, and it would leave their beds high and dry. So about a 99% mortality rate for all of the babies being born naturally. So we suffered through that. 2007, they closed the season till 2010, terrible runs. And 3 years ago, they changed their practices a little bit. It actually has to do with the federally endangered winter run salmon that are protected federally. So the federal agencies mandate the water be kept at a high level, artificially high level, for those few remaining winter run salmon to spawn. The problem is it coincides with the fall run spawning, and when the fall run sets up their beds to spawn, the last winter run salmon gets done spawning, and then the Department of Water Resources can drop the flows, which they've been doing, like I said, last 15 years. And it's really hard on the fall fish. 3 years ago, they changed their practices. They kind of did this little thing with the water. They bumped it up and down every day or every other day, and it kept the fall fish from spawning. So it held them off until it was right. You know, the winter run were gone. It was right. And so 3 years, salmon running 3 year cycles. And this year's the first year we get back some of those naturally spawned fish that happened in downtown Redding. I think, don't quote, 18 to 20,000 pairs of Chinook salmon were spawning in downtown Redding, which is with a 1% return, you're looking at 200,000 to 150 to 200,000 more salmon being brought to the river, besides the hatchery, which spawns 13,000 pairs of adult Chinook salmon, trying to get about 13 million eggs, which is a 1% return. 130,000 salmon is ideally what they want. So now, instead of just fishing for the hatchery fish, which we had been, which could return somewhere 80 to 100,000 salmon, 130,000 is what they want. Doesn't usually happen, but now we get a bonus of like an extra 150 to 200,000 salmon. And this year will be the first year they show up. Regardless of the water conditions, the salmon are showing up. They're coming to spawn. Now, there are some issues I've seen with the fish that showed up this year. They have the Pacific lamprey will latch onto them and catch a ride upriver. They're kind of like a parasite. So the salmon's their host. So they'll bear markings from where that lamprey attached. In the warmer water downriver, a warm water bacteria, flesh-eating bacteria, will get on the salmon and kind of eat away at those little marks that they already have on there. And I saw some of that right at the beginning of the season. The fish I've caught the last few days that have been showing up are not showing it. The fires actually play a big part. As bad as they are on everything else, they keep the water temperatures down in the river because the sun doesn't get to warm it up. So all the way down now in Knights Landing to Sacramento, the water's cooled down a little bit, and these fish are showing up without bearing those marks. but we have a healthy run. The salmon are coming. The water issue will show up 3 years from now when the salmon being born this year. They're calling for some pretty bad mortality rate on the babies that will be going out this year from the spawn. So if we see anything at all impacted by this drought, it probably won't be for 3 years until we do. I mean, the drought could be long gone. We could have a ton of rain, and then the salmon don't show up. Maybe the hatchery salmon will show up, but the natural spawn salmon that we've been pretty excited to have, they might take a little bit of a hit. We'll see. It's still early, and it may not play out that way, but that's kind of what's being forecasted by biologists in the research department with Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, I've read about that a ton, how basically they say all these juvenile fish could die off. All these juvenile salmon that are being spawned could die off because of the warm water in the river.
Right.
Is that strictly because of the droughts, or do wildlife officials who manage these rivers and these water flows, do they take some blame as well?
Good question. No one really accepts blame, right? I mean, to place blame, there's several things. I mean, water management. If they held back some water in the lake, or when they released the baby salmon from the hatchery, or when the natural spawn salmon were born, if they would bump those water levels up to get them to the ocean quicker, it would be a huge help. Unfortunately, the federal funding and state funding doesn't really allow for that. The water is worth more to farmers than it is to salmon, period. Here's what I do know historically, and judging if on my personal opinion, and I could be wrong, I feel like historically in time, the Sacramento River, you could walk across it at times before the Shasta Dam. It got warm. Okay, there's been droughts through history. Salmon have always prevailed. They run in 3-year cycles. Mother Nature makes sure that out of a 1-year class fish. So a salmon spawning this year, they'll call it the 2021 year class. Is they identify them by year class. So out of that 80% roughly, actually it's a little lower, and the 70% will return as 3-year-olds to spawn. 12% will return as 2-year-olds to spawn. And then the percents go down dramatically for 4-year-olds and a 5-year-old salmon, up to 6-7-year-old salmon. I think we had one return that they saw below the hatchery that was 80 something pounds.
Battle Creek, I remember that. Yeah.
Giant. And so Mother Nature throws in that small percentage here and there to alleviate eliminating the species by drought, or it's kind of already been played in. It's we can mess with all these things, but Mother Nature's already done a pretty good job of making sure salmon will sustain existence. Some of the practices fight that, but I do believe in droughts in the past, I mean, salmon, they show that the juveniles will grow tremendously in warm water. In like 70-degree water, the babies will grow huge. Like they get out in flooded rice fields and different things. So I'm not sure, I'd like to say it's not going to play a bigger role as they're saying, but the biologists who do study these things say it's going to be a pretty significant loss to the juvenile salmon. I try to stay on the positive end of things and a little more optimistic, and just judging what I've seen growing up, I think we're going to survive it.
Yeah. And, I don't mean to place a ton of blame on these officials, because they have a lot of things to consider, right? I mean, we love the salmon runs, but there are, there's water wars here in California, how we distribute the water. And I think you and I live more on the fishing side, where the farmers have their needs, and there's needs everywhere. So I don't want to place blame on them, but are there things that they could do moving forward in the future to alleviate these issues for salmon? Like what sort of policies could we adopt to help these runs flourish?
Another excellent question. And so, I mean, personally, I feel like it's been poor management as far as preparation in this. I mean, our populations are expanding, in California and the world wide. We knew, my mother told me when I was in high school, or even before that, she said, you should study water law. California is not going to have enough water eventually. And I mean, I didn't even give it any thought until, now here we are, and water is a huge issue. So I think raising Shasta Dam 6 feet would have been a huge thing. The Sites project out in Maxwell, Stony Ford, Ladoga, all the way up to, I believe, Pascana was a huge lake they were going to put in for more storage. I think it's been probably known and documented that we were going to have water shortage issues at some point, just because of supply and demand from ag and from cities being built in the desert, things like that. So other than making more storage, I think hands are kind of tied, but I mean, we've built, we're capable as a country of doing and a state of doing great things, many things. And I believe if the steps were taken soon, or the appropriate steps were taken to get more storage, we would be in good shape. As it is right now, the storage we have available, we're stuck kind of at what we have. One other thing I think about often is, we've put a man on the moon decades and decades ago. Why can't we let these salmon get past the dams? We can't build a fish ladder that starts 2 miles from a dam and gets them past it. If they got up into their natural spawning habitat, I mean, like I said, historically droughts have happened and the salmon have survived. If we could let them get up there and kind of take our hands off of some of the manipulation we put on the hatcheries and different things, that I think we would be in great shape. And I really don't think it's that outlandish or far of a stretched idea to make that happen. And studies have proven it. They'll be fine. They get up in the mountains with colder water. Even if there's a drought, there's still cool pools and deep water up there where the babies would be able to stay, and salmon can stay for a year in the river, or what need be before they go out to the ocean. They've kind of they do well on their own. It's when we get involved with it that we kind of we start thinking for them, and we can do this, or we can truck them, or all these things, and it's all actually just a science experiment. We don't know what's going to happen. It's like we're going to find out in 3 years how it went, but the results aren't even back fast. So if it's a catastrophe, we practice those practices for 3 years without knowing the results, and if the results are bad, it's bad. If they're good, they're good.
Yeah. It's fascinating you say that, because we had this John Griffiths on our podcast a couple months ago, and he's a naturalist and he's done a lot of work with salmon. And he basically said, if we let these salmon runs die off, like that's terrible. Like, we do so much as human beings for all of our different needs.
Correct.
We should be able to save these salmon, right? We're not using our imagination. We're not, putting our money where our mouth is, and that's a huge problem. The Shasta Dam it's a fascinating look, because you have all these issues with raising Shasta Dam, right? And I could see the issues with doing it in terms of the native land and the fish on the McCloud and everything. But you're right. We're seeing these water issues. We know they're going to happen, and yet we're sort of sitting here twiddling our thumbs and not doing anything before it comes. And now it's coming, and we're screwed. They are still building sites, aren't they? They still plan to build sites reservoirs.
Yeah, I think growing up here around Corning and Chico, but I know some of the farmers out west where the sites project is going to take place. I mean, there's no real good answer. I empathize with both sides. Some of those farmers that have had that land since they got here in the early 1900s, or even a little earlier, they've been farming them for a long time. A lot of cattle, sheep, and stuff out there. Not so much. A lot of it's going to almonds now, but some of those old boys had to pass away, and the only way to get that land to make that go through was the kids there's more than one child, and they end up selling it to separate, and instead of one person taking it. It's kind of how it goes. So it took them a while to get their hands on that project. Yes, I do believe it's still going forward. We don't move fast in this legislation, and I mean it's a double-edged sword. Everything's going to take time, and right now all of a sudden, we're faced with it. Like you said, it's here, it's now. nothing's going to fix that right now. I mean, moving forward, yes, I would hope that they would, expedite plans to get those things going as soon as possible. But we have a water shortage issue or a storage issue, and that's not going away now. I think if anything was to fix salmon, it would be raising the amount of babies raised in the hatchery. There's a big debate about hatchery salmon and wild salmon. There's no wild salmon left. We call them natural spawns. So they will spawn in the river if a certain amount of them, even from the hatchery, will stray and spawn places. But the hatcheries are set up in mitigation from the loss of habitat with Shasta Dam. I mean, it's a legal thing. They are mandated to do it. So these hatcheries were built and they run it right now at about 1/4 to 1/3% of capacity. So the infrastructure is there for them to raise 400,000 salmon instead of 100,000 salmon. I mean, the raceways are there, the power is there. I mean, it would cost a little more money, but not really. I mean, as far as numbers go, it's a lot smaller number than it would be to build another hatchery or do other things. So I think Dave Jacobs said it pretty simply. So if you start with this many salmon, you get this much salmon. If you start with this many salmon, you get this many salmon. So for our hatchery to keep it going, in the meantime, while we suffer through this water issue, it's a very small cost financially and fixed. The infrastructure is there. These hatcheries were built to produce that many salmon. When I started guiding, I think in 2004, within the 2 years prior to that, 2 years after that, we had 400,000 salmon show up. I mean, you would literally wrap your lures, and out of 4 people in the boat, when you dropped them in at daylight, 2 people would hook up instantly. I mean, you were done limited out, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning. Salmon everywhere. Since practices changed and the Department of Water Resources water practices changed, it's gone downhill dramatically, almost to, like I said, they closed the season from 2007 to 2010. I think 30,000 salmon showed up one year, 17,000 maybe showed up another year. Terrible, So there are things that can be done to keep the salmon around. And commercially, the guys in the ocean, for commercial salmon, they truck these baby salmon down, and it does, instinctually they don't find their way back, a lot of them, and that's been documented through the trucking program. But it puts salmon in the ocean for the commercial value and to be sold. And in the meantime, I mean, if that's what has to happen to take place while we suffer through this drought, a certain amount are always going to come back, and it doesn't take a lot of salmon for the hatchery to produce what they need. With a few things could raise their 1% success rate to 2% success rate, and then you're looking at 200,000 salmon every year instead of 100,000. It's very doable. All that juggling around with politics and things like that's where we are going to struggle. But the actual salmon are very easy to. They need water. That's about the only thing they need. They'll be fine on their own, and if the conditions in the river are bad, like I said, the trucking program has proven they can take them down. They're going to be fine. They're going to live in the ocean and be around, and a certain amount of them will come back. They just they fail to identify where home is, because they're kind of born in Battle Creek. I mean, a lot of issues. Battle Creek runs at like less than 300 cubic feet per second, and the river's around 12,000. So they're trying to sniff out a little tiny, a little bit of their native smell when they're returning, and it's kind of harder on them. If it had been built in the river, the Sacramento River, like the Feather River or the American River, they would identify stronger with the smell and return more from even being trucked down there. See, they imprint on their way out as babies. They'll stop in certain spots and they'll stay there for a week or two and in certain holes, and they'll eat the little mayflies, and on their way out they grow. It's kind of pinging a GPS mark in their head as they go out, and when they return, it's amazing. The adults will return to the exact spot the babies as babies stayed and imprinted and feeding. So like the salmon holes we see all the babies jumping now, in 3 years the adults are going to return to the exact spot and check in there on their way back upriver as well. So they're kind of it's really unique and interesting. There is a lot that goes with it that we know, the scientists know, and biologists know. Most fishermen probably are unaware of, but salmon can survive, and the water is the issue. And I think letting them pass them at any cost would help. I think like trucking them or raising more and then trucking them down is also a solution. But here the cost and things, that's kind of where we're at, and I say positive. This is my occupation, and so I'm always going to side on the side of optimism, I guess.
Yeah.
And from there, they're doing an all right job. I think this year is going to definitely be a struggle and a test to find out, what are they willing to do with our salmon stocks? I mean, are they that important? Is there commercial value to them? Or the commercial value is kind of the only thing holding them around. I mean, they do drive some money and into the industry. And I mean, that there's a lot more people to fight for us out of the commercial fishery than there is the sport fishing here in the river. A lot of it takes place down by the Bay Area and San Francisco, and it's shipped around the world. But California's had huge salmon stocks for a long time, and we're one of the biggest producers of salmon around. We have 4 distinct runs, which we're the only river in the world. I mean, there's a lot. California salmon history is pretty deep.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I try to stay optimistic as well. But who knows? I mean, this drought could last a few more years, and that the issue could get worse and worse. So, well, we'll keep an eye on it. I know that it directly, impacts your business and everything. So we're hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Speaking of you, I want to get into you a little bit. And if anyone doesn't know, you can follow him on social media, Salmon Sac River, your social media, your YouTube page, everything. It's awesome. How'd you get into fishing and eventually, become so passionate about it that you became a guide?
So I think a lot of people in Northern California, growing up here, well, and I'm 44 years old. So, around my generation, definitely before and some after, we all trout fished up in the Sierra Nevadas. It was a common getaway. The parents would take you as kids up there and we'd catch trout in the Sierra Nevadas. And so it started for me young. I actually was fortunate to have I grew up spending my summers on a big ranch up near Portola. And, the issues of today weren't as bad. Then literally be take the dog and be back by dark. So I explored and fished, and I mean, it was a big part of my life. I actually had another set of grandparents over in Hillsburg on the Russian River, that I learned to steelhead fish, and I learned about these steelhead, and I've always kind of needed to know things, ask questions, whatever. So it was a part of my life. And I think my dad called me one day somewhere, I think it was 2003 or 4. And he said, hey, they're having a Coast Guard class up in Redding. This auxiliary is holding a Coast Guard class. It's 16 weeks long. And you get your Coast Guard license through this class, and you could be a guide. So at this time I'd worked for PG&E, and then actually was doing construction stuff up in Redding during that big housing boom, and saw the opportunity and went for it, and it was slow to start. Back then it was Yellow Pages. I think we advertised by Yellow Pages and small fish reports, word of mouth from other guides, things like that. Which Redding actually has a huge history. Rooster's Landing has a huge history of salmon fishing, massive, nothing like it is today, but it was really a big thing. So I met some of the guys that have been around a while, and from there it's just kind of got a boat and started the struggles, I guess, of getting clients of your own and moving forward on it. And yeah, so I was a full-time guide in 2005. And I think the most rewarding thing ever is taking people out and saying, that's the best day I've ever had, or that was the funnest day of fishing I've ever had. And kids, I love seeing kids or taking kids out that, it was done for me. So I like doing it for kids. Then maybe that they'll be doing it for life, if you give them a positive experience. So yeah, all these things, they played a role. Mainly, I think being just a native Northern Californian is kind of drew me to living in the outdoors, and I still love what I do. The all this stuff coming down on us, it can be frustrating if you let it get to you. If the salmon were gone, we'd fish for striped bass. I mean, the guiding would go, you could guide for for any of the fishing. I personally love salmon, and I think they're totally unique and very intricate fish as far as being able to survive and sustain. And I love eating salmon, actually, also. But yeah, the guiding started for me just kind of being I guess a native Northern Californian. Like, it's outdoors has been in my life, and I do like to provide that service to people abroad.
Yeah, when we went with you and Ryan Tripp, that was such a blast. I grew up fly fishing, and I'd never really done salmon fishing like that before. And I think we got 120 pounds worth of over 4 salmon, just
you guys
huge fish.
Yes.
And we brought home like 50 pounds of meat, and my wife was like, where the hell are we going to put this? And that was a blast. And that's that experience you talk about. Like, I won't forget that day, even if I do it 100 more times. The first time I did it, I was like, wow, this is special. This is unique. Other than the Sac, I know you're known as Salmon Sac River. What are your places to fish in Northern California other than the Sac?
Well, for salmon, the Feather River traditionally, when I first started guiding, they had the spring run you could fish for starting. Actually, it didn't close, or it closed a short time in the winter, but it reopened at the beginning of the year. So we would start in April there. And we still fish the Feather River. It's kind of same thing right now, water depending. It's having serious struggles. Like, I think I just read it'll be at the record low within days. It's dropping over a foot a day. It'll be before its record. It's at its record low. So the struggle this year is water and water conditions, and it hasn't been a big fishery for us for the last 2 or 3 years. But traditionally, I spend a lot of time there, at least a month out of the season fishing around Orville, the outlet hole, the combat zone, things like that, because it does produce a very large, second largest run in the state now. The Klamath River, we also do some guiding on, but it's struggling too. The spring run salmon's kind of been wiped out as far as fishing goes. The numbers are terrible. They're struggling to exist. Also a water related thing. And so we don't fish the Klamath or the Feather anymore for that. Everything kind of opens in July now. The Trinity Klamath opens on July 1st and the Feather on July 16th, like the Sac. But we do find ourselves there, and then my love is on the coast with steelhead too. I love being on the coast and chasing those coastal steelhead down. Northern California and Southern Oregon. California has so much to offer. It's diverse. It's got everything. We all, if you grew up here, we know that. We have the ocean and the Sierras and the Sacramento River. All kinds of species of fish to fish for. I do love going to the coast, being in the redwoods, and catching the steelhead from December until February.
When you say on the coast, like Smith River.
Sure. So we go to the Smith River. I think there's steelhead in probably, I can't remember exactly. I've caught them in over 30 something creeks, streams, and tributaries from San Francisco to the Oregon border. Primarily for guiding, we stay on the Eel River, which would be south of Eureka, like Scotia, and the South Fork goes up to like Laytonville, Leggett, Garberville. And we spend a fair amount of time there. And the Smith River, of course, right by the Oregon border, is probably the most beautiful spot on the planet, I think, that I fished. It calls me every year regardless. Like, it's kind of like the ocean. If I don't see it or smell it once in a while, it's like you're missing something. And we enjoy that. And then we find ourselves back here in the spring for these big trophy striped bass. Man, they've always been around. The old timers used to catch them with big live pike minnows and different things. And now we have these, thanks to the bass world and our good buddy Johnny Pearl, who does big tournament stuff now in Clear Lake County. We have these big custom glide baits, like, some of them weigh up to a pound or more, and anywhere from 8 to 14, 15 inches long. And those striped bass can't resist them, and the people really can't get enough of those either. It's a very visual thing. You see your bait, you're fishing, it's on top within a foot of the surface, and you see these giant striped bass come up and just inhale them, and it's pretty addicting. I mean, I've been doing it now for I think 8 years or something like that, kind of Garrett Dixon with he has G-Rat Baits, Sneaky Pete. He's made it actually possible. Excuse me, and his partner Hank DeBose. They made it possible for like the everyday person to be able to buy one of these glide baits that used to cost hundreds of dollars if you could get one from a bass guy. Now they have one on the market that's like $40-50, and it does the trick. I mean, it gets these big stripers, and that's kind of the last few years been a really big part of our guiding, and that happens here on the Sac, some on the Feather River, but mainly on Sacramento River, and we fish the whole thing from Nice Landing all the way up to even now the Red Bluff Diversion Dam gone, we catch them up to Redding, and that's a pretty cool fishery. I mean, definitely keeps you busy. The phone rings a lot. People really enjoy that, and they keep coming back for that. It's like it's visual, so I think it's a little more addicting than any other kind of fishing, because you get to see it all happen right in front of you, and it's in the wintertime, or in the spring, so it's cooler, and then finally we do some sturgeon fishing. We get to catch these big white sturgeon, and I think the slot limit is 40 to 60 inches. So if you want to keep one, they're available to keep too. If not, I mean, catching something that, is 10 foot long or 8 foot long, it's 200 years old. I mean, these fish are huge. They're just cool to see, I mean, they've been swimming up and down this river for a long time, and they're also a unique fishery.
Have you ever fished for sturgeon on the Shasta Lake?
No, actually, so I had a buddy just was in my boat yesterday afternoon, and he said he was going up the pit arm. It was only about 5 feet, 6 feet deep, and he said he saw one about 10 feet long, breach right in front of his boat, and he was blown away. And last year the story with the one that washed up dead or whatever, big thing. They are in there. I know anglers that fish Shasta Lake for bass, and they say they see them all the time up the pit arm doing it. And I actually had told my friend we're gonna get up there and try and see if we can't catch one of these Shasta Lake sturgeon, because it was rumored for a long time, and kind of like a mythical thing, but they are there. They spawned up the pit arm traditionally before Shasta Dam. That's pretty much where all these sturgeon found the criteria to spawn. So they need a certain water volume to spawn. They need a certain solidity, so silt in the water, and they need a certain substrate, which is the river bottom, to spawn. The pit arm had all that until they built Shasta Dam, which some got stuck up there during the spawning process, and are still there and have reproduced successfully. They're finding them of all sizes, so they are reproducing there. Now it all takes place down near Calusa. They find this similar substrate and water volume and solidity content that they need to spawn. So I do. I myself want to go up and try and see if I can target and catch one of these things in Lake Shasta while it's low enough that there's a lot less places for them to hide, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
But
the stories always fascinate me about the sturgeon who got stuck by the building of the Shasta Dam. And like you said, it was a legend, for so many years. I remember hearing about it as a kid. And now we have people taking photos and videos of them, and really you only get like 2 big ones, maybe 1 or 2 big ones every year. But like last year, there was one these people caught, it was like 500 pounds. It was huge. So they're down there. There's not a ton, but it's fun to see this like legend that I heard of growing up sort of come to fruition, come to life.
Likewise. And so honestly, the biggest sturgeon I've ever caught downriver here, below the dam, I think it might have been 300 pounds. They have huge ones on the Snake River, the Columbia, but the ones in Lake Shasta that have been trapped for so long have never been targeted, have not been, commercially or poached or anything. So there are some up there that are larger probably than anything still existing down here in the river. That also intrigues me, because I think they would get up to, 13, 14 feet long and could weigh up to 1,000 pounds before, we started getting our hands on them. I think the river record, Ray Pittenger, I think his name was, I think it's 468 pounds or something like that he caught just north of Calusa there. That's the documented record. But yeah, historically they got much larger.
How far upriver do they go? I mean, do they go all the way up to Redding?
No, they closed to fishing at Highway 162 in Butte City, but they find that, like I said, they need that certain conditions to spawn, and they find that between, let's say, Ord Bend, probably Ord Bend. You'll get some up as far as Ord Bend, which is just outside of Chico, and that's about as far as they go up to spawn. The green sturgeon now, which is also native to the Sac, they're all over all the way up to Redding. They spend more of their time up here from Hamilton City north, all the way up to, now the diversion dam's gone. They're in all the way up to downtown Redding, and they're closed to fishing, endangered, but it's good to see them. They're actually, probably run has improved, and it looks healthy by my standards now. I mean, I see more and more. I mean, they're out there, and we see them, and so they did traditionally spawn up here, more and successfully spawn now in the river above Hamilton City.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, great talking to you today, Mike. I do want to finish with, we recently posted one of your videos. It was a giant king Chinook salmon jumping out of the water and you catching it with a net, and I think it got like 2 million views on our Facebook page. Tell me that story and what it was like to see that thing not only jump out of the water, but have the wherewithal to put the net under there.
So I wish I could take credit for netting. I was actually operating the boat. Another fishing guy, Robert Petty, he was with me. He has his own business, North State Salmon, but we were together and have had a group of clients that I've had for 8-10 years. And so the gentleman hooks a salmon and it jumps twice prior to me turning on the camera. I thought, you know what, maybe I'll turn on the camera and just see if I can catch this thing. So I turn it on in slow motion. Then like the whole big dream would be like, yeah, this may happen, but likelihood is not going to happen. At least maybe catch a jump in the air. So it comes right, we fight it, no more jumps or anything, but I'm still recording. And right when it gets to the boat, I see it go down and it comes straight up and leaps out of the air. And Robert just happened to be ready with the net, and he sees it, makes the move. I mean, it didn't land in the net. I mean, he had to move it. So I give him a little bit of a hard time about that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Because people say, oh, it just jumped in the net. Well, kind of. He had to move it. So it was a good move, and he nailed it, man. And it was a huge sound. He was 30 pounds, 31, 32 pounds. And he caught it. And, we instantly all, whoa, yeah, get pumped up. I think that's actually never happened to me. I've heard of it happening before, but that was, super cool and cool to catch on camera. Like a lot of things happen. You don't have your camera on. I started last few years, I just try to keep that thing rolling as long as storage will allow, because you never know what you're going to catch, And that was just
right. It was so cool watching the salmon sort of swim up and then just fly through the air. It reminds me of like Michael Jordan, like running up to the free throw line and then just flying, and that was a great video. Well, I love everything you do. Keep doing your social media stuff, because I think you do some of the best out of any of the fishing people here in Northern California. If you don't follow Mike Rasmussen, Salmon Sac River on Instagram, on Facebook and YouTube, anywhere else?
No, that's it. I'm trying to play TikTok. Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, no, I like your TikTok stuff is good too.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys, all you do for us too. I mean, it's great. I look forward to having you guys back out on the boat again. I mean, we had a great time, and I feel like you show up with a positive attitude, and we have a good time. I mean, good things happen when it's like that. And you guys certainly bring that to the table. And Ryan and I look forward to get you guys back on the boat this year, at least once or a couple times, to see if we can't catch you and your brother some more salmon. It'd be hard to beat what you did last time, but we're gonna give it a shot.
It's what's funny about last time we went is we've done a couple of these fishing videos with different people. And
sure.
The saying, as like a fishing guide, as soon as you turn on the camera, the fish go away, right? Like it just always, and just for some reason that day we just scored 4 beautiful salmon. So that was unique, because we've done fishing trips where we were on the water all day and we barely got anything with the cameras rolling. And so that was an awesome day. I'll never forget it.
It's funny that Ryan is, he's young. He's 20. He's not 20. He's 20, I think. And, he doesn't know to be cameras. He doesn't know, he's not superstitious. He does not believe in those things like the barge hole. showing up to the barge hole with 80 boats. I mean, I was like petrified for years. I would not go do it on opening day. And then I finally worked myself up to it, and he jumps in there like it's nothing. And it's, you kind of need that, you know, and that's funny. Yeah. You guys, I thought, you know, here we go. The wind was blowing too, which is also what do they call it? Faux pas, or it's like a superstition, you know. It's not a great time to be fishing, and the wind was blowing and everything was going on. You showed up with cameras, and yeah, went out there and smacked them. And no, that was a good time. I really enjoyed that. And do it again for sure. And yeah, like I said, that yeah, they're not camera shy for sure.
You talk about Ryan. I got to get Ryan Tripp on this podcast as well. You know, he's super young. He's like 20, and he's like this phenom fishing guide.
Like a
good.
Like it's just something different.
Yeah. Once again, Mike, you're awesome. I appreciate the time today, and we'll talk. We're gonna get on the river soon, so I'll be on your phone here shortly.
Looking forward to it. Love to have you,
Mike Rasmussen.
See you guys.
All right. Thanks to Mike Rasmussen for our awesome interview. He is certainly passionate about this type of things. And, you know, what he said is that the salmon runs are actually could be pretty good in the coming years, but it's going to be 3, 5, 10 years down the line that we're actually going to really see the impacts of this drought. So, it was good to get his perspective, because I've been reading all this stuff, you know, in like the Sacramento Bee and the San Francisco Chronicle about these salmon die-offs, but actually having someone who's on the water day in and day out that sees it happen, it was good to talk to him. So
we're going to have to get back out there with him too.
Oh, I am soon, believe me. So we've come to the portion of our podcast where, again, we left some time here at the end to discuss our Lemurian topic of the week. And we actually talked about it. Was it last week or the week before?
I think it was last week.
Yes. So this gentleman who's been hopping into our comment section, both on the website and our YouTube pages, and basically claimed to have met Lemurians, right? So I didn't really put much into his comments, and I thought it was kind of funny, the stuff he was saying, but I finally clicked on his link to his blog, and it was a lot more than I expected. So I couldn't help myself. I went onto our website and I wrote a long,
you did a deep dive.
I did a deep dive on him and his claims. So basically, his name is Lowell Johnson, and he claims to be, he said, quote unquote, "I am a regular guy who visited Mount Shasta in July, August this past summer," so 2020. "I was skeptical as anyone until I was invited inside to see Telos for myself." Telos is the city, the Lemurian city inside Mount Shasta. "Do what you wish with my information, but I saw for myself that it exists, and soon they will make themselves known to the rest of the surface humans." So basically, he has this diatribe on this website. It's called 40kftview.com, 40,000footview.com. And he basically goes into this huge thing about that he went on a tour of the city of Telos with Lemurians, and they, there's all these different tiers, and there's these crystal walls, and at the end, he goes before this council, and they ask him to help them, bring Lemurians and humans together. There's a lot to unpack here. What was your initial thought?
Okay. Well, his story goes that he was hiking up Mount Shasta to explore the whole Lemurian community, and he sat down to take a break, and his phone died or just mysteriously shut off. And then this gentleman named Alex appeared out of this hole in the side of the mountain and just said, "Hey, come with me and learn about Lemurians," basically. Super far-fetched. Now, I do like some of the details that he gives, like with regards to what the interior of Mount Shasta looks like. There being a white pyramid, several levels, What really threw me off was the fact that there was like, he says that there was like areas of like nature, and it's like, how do you have like plants inside a mountain?
So, okay, so I know you didn't read his whole thing.
No, I did not.
By golly, I
will
don't blame
not.
you. I did, because I am the foremost Lemurian expert on this podcast. And he said, like, so there's levels, right? In each level, there's an industry level, and there's a level where all the Lemurians live, and there's a level for like quote unquote nature, and everything's hydroponic, he said.
Yeah, but they still need light.
So he also talks about, this is good because you're asking me questions about this, and he actually covers every little detail, and that's why this is really fascinating. He said you go in there and there's no, you can't see the sky or anything, but there is natural light throughout the entire city.
How?
I don't know.
Well, then you can't just say that.
You'd think if they're sitting in the middle of a mountain, they'd figure out how to get natural light through, right? This is a ancient civilization.
So you're basing the fact that they could get light based on the fact that they developed an entire civilization inside of a mountain. Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah. At some point, they figured out how to bring natural light throughout the city.
What's with the white pyramid?
I don't know. He didn't really go into that. He just said it. There's
like
a big white
temple
pyramid
kind of a thing.
Yeah,
it's like
right in the middle, right in the middle of Telos. What really?
I visualize this like Fraggle Rock. You know.
Took me a second to visualize.
Rock,
no, you're totally right.
Muppet type show from our childhood.
What I really loved about this, and let me be clear, I love this blog, and it was way too bloated. It was so long that I can't. It took me an hour to read it. Is he goes deep into detail on all this stuff, and I've talked on this podcast, and I've told you about they made this movie about Lemurians. It's available on Amazon Prime. It's called I forget what it's called, but it's terrible. It is god awful. But if you were to make a Lemurian movie based on what this guy's describing, like, that sounds magical. This is almost like Willy Wonka right here. Like you step into this new world.
Beyond Lemuria.
No. There's a different one.
Well, that one's on Amazon.
So that one you're looking at is
there's Shando and the island of Lemuria.
That one you're looking
The Lost Land of Lemuria.
No, so these are all documentaries. There was a dramatic one.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It was the worst film I've ever seen in my entire life.
Worse than Jack the Bear?
It said, I looked it up. It's on IMDb. Its budget was less than $1,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it actually really is. And I don't want to, any filmmaker, go make whatever film you want. I just thought it was bad. But anyway, he goes into this explanation of Lemuria. He talks about how Alex, quote unquote, Alex the Lemurian, knew the owner of one of the crystal shops in town. And he said, oh, you know this person? Yeah, I know. It was kind of weird.
And how some of the art was very similar to the art in Mount Shasta.
The owner of the crystal shop had seen the art in Lemuria and then mimicked it for the crystal shop in Mount Shasta. That seems a little weird to me.
Just that seems weird.
No,
I feel like we're just talking about a weird story.
And I don't want to make fun of this guy because I actually, whatever the story is, I think it's kind of cool to think of this ancient city of these, beings inside Mount Shasta. I just think it's a fun story.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
He gets into this thing where at the very end of it, after he goes into detail about the whole city and his experience and Alex, this is where he loses me because he starts talking about himself. And he claims to be this fifth dimensional awareness human. And that's why they chose him to represent the Lemurians as the Lemurians emerge from Mount Shasta and reunite with humankind.
Which is supposed to happen later this year.
Yes, it's supposed to happen soon.
We're always right around the corner from these, planetary events, according to all the experts.
Also, he says in his mind, he was there for 4 or 5 hours, and he came out, and his time on his watch it was a little under an hour. So that's interesting. Time moves slower in Telos. Is it slower? Yes, slower. And anyway,
No, time moves faster.
does time move faster? Yeah, time is different in inside Mount Shasta, apparently.
Super believable story, if you ask me.
Well, again, I don't want to make fun of this guy, but
It's elaborate.
It's very elaborate. Very. What got me is this is exactly how these beliefs happened in the first place. Is one guy, J.C. Brown, went on the mountain, claimed all this detailed stuff, wrote like 12 books about it, and now there's all these beliefs behind it. Is this guy trying to take that, playbook and create his own story and be the new Lemurian guy? Yeah. By the way, J.C. Brown made a bunch of money off his books.
Right.
So it's this guy. Makes sense that he would try to, if he's really into this stuff, he would try to make up a big, creative, elaborate story and sell it.
If you're going to generate a marketing spark, this is a good way of doing it.
Well, he got my attention.
I mean, if he's got a book ready to publish, I mean, what better way than to release this diatribe?
By the way, a lot of people read this article on our website. A lot. Like, I was shocked, and I shouldn't be shocked anymore because people love Lemurian content on our website day in and day out. And, the comment section was pretty funny. Like, oh, that's what happens when you take mescaline on Mount Shasta.
I actually had customers at the winery yesterday from Mount Shasta, and the conversation of Lemurians did come up. And I didn't even tell you that, but we talked about the whole, just the spiritual essence that is the Mount Shasta area. I guess was really the tone of our conversation.
Did you tell him that your brother is the foremost influencer in the area?
I did.
By the way, and this is on the article on our website, he takes a picture of the mountain and circles where the portal to Telos is.
Well, I mean, he's got a phone. He should just go film it.
But phones don't work.
Well, they shut off mysteriously before the open.
It shut off. Right. And by the way, his entire tour was on this levitation device that it was honestly
like a hoverboard.
It was like a big platform. I get what you're saying. You're making a joke, and I'm like being serious about it.
No, I mean, you're defending him, and I'm kind of leaning in the more joking.
This captured my imagination, unlike any Lemurian story has.
Well, I mean, we stopped recording last week, and that's when you brought it up. And it's like, all right, well, this is clearly going to be a topic on next week's episode, being this one we're on right now.
I do think I wrote this article after you left, after we filmed our podcast. I clicked on the article, and I just dove deep. I spent way too much time in it because, for one, I wanted to do this. Everything he says in his blog, I say verbatim, and I don't say this is wrong or this is crazy or whatever. I'm just like, this is what this guy's
You're a fact
claiming.
Collector, right?
Make your own decision about it. But it's pretty wild, and deep down, I hope this guy is the prophet of the Lemurians. To bring them
fifth dimension.
Yeah, to bring them into humankind again. But anyway, you know what? Honestly, if they're so forward with regards to like technology, then they can probably listen to this. Yo, Lemurians, Alex specifically, give us a shout out. If you got Zoom, we'd love to have you on the pod. You think Lemurians listen to podcasts?
Well, if they are able to get sunlight through a mountain, they sure as hell can download the Talking NorCal podcast.
They're also telepathic. So I guarantee if Lemurians exist,
they just sent me a message telepathically. They said that they love the pod.
They are Lemurians. If they do exist, they are aware of me. I'm just gonna say that.
I think they love the pod. They're probably some of our most loyal subscribers.
Yes. I want this to be a larger 400-page science fiction book. I just want to say that. I would read that in a heartbeat. I'm sure there's books like this. They're all older. Like Lowell Johnson, create a large book that I can dive deep into, and I will read
I'd rather
it.
have him on the pod.
I don't know if I want one.
Lowell, if you know us, reach out to us. If you're listening to this, we'd like to talk to you.
Maybe someday, Lowell, we'll get him on. I'm not making fun of him. If he claims this and he believes this, man, good for you. But it's a wild story, and it's something I just wanted to dive deeper on in the podcast because we talk about this Lemurian stuff a lot.
You're the foremost expert.
Yep. So is that it?
Are
we ending on the high note there?
I think we should.
Okay. So that does it for this episode of the Talking NorCal podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. Follow us on social media, Talking NorCal and Active NorCal. We got some fun episodes coming up that we're figuring out, we're hashing out. So be sure to subscribe to us because I promise you they're going to be a lot of fun. And that's all I got this week. Thanks for listening. And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. Or NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little mental when we